All right. Looks like we are recording. Hello, hello. I've got to get my notes up here for you so I can see everything that I need to see on my screen. I hope you are having a great Friday so far. All right. We are going to jump on in. So, today, we were talking about balance. This is something that is near and dear to my heart that I have walked through myself. And I talk to so many of my coaching clients about. So today we're calling this 1 hour to change the way you think about your time and experience your life and business. So that's what we're going to do today. I think most of you ladies know me, but welcome. I am so glad that you're here. I know that your time is valuable and that if you are interested in a teaching on balance and finding more balance, you are busy. So I don't take it for granted that you have chosen to spend this hour with me. We might not go the whole hour, but I wanted to have enough time set aside just in case. So if you don't know me, I'm Kelly Jones. I'm a certified life coach. I have been a financial advisor for high net worth clients for 25 years. I'm a certified financial planner, a CPA, an entrepreneur, a business owner. I've built a network marketing business. I'm a wife, a mom, a breast cancer survivor. So I have a lot of experience with needing to be able to create balance in my life. And I know a lot of you ladies can relate to that. So I have spent decades really helping people make intentional decisions. I have built businesses while raising a family. I have experienced seasons of tremendous imbalance in my life. And I've worked with many of my coaching clients whose number one desire it was to find more balance in their life. So, I'm going to guess that if you were here today, you could probably relate to either feeling like there just aren't enough hours in the day. I know I felt like that for years. I felt guilty while I was working. I felt guilty while I was with a sick kid, but was supposed to be working. I felt guilty when I would rest. And I spent a lot of years not actually really giving myself time to rest because of that. And really wondering if I'm just sort of doing a mediocre job at everything because I'm trying to do everything and I don't have enough of myself left over to give to any of the things, right? So today I want to really challenge what most of us believe balance is. So I'm going to teach you three simple things that helped me truly go from living in perpetual overwhelm, over busyness, not enoughness in any area, and really just trying to survive my life. And it looked beautiful, right? I'm not saying that it wasn't, that there was anything wrong with my life. It was a beautiful, successful life that I had worked hard to build. And I felt like I was drowning in this version of success that I had created for myself. And so the three things that I'm going to teach today are things that helped me go from that place 10, 12 years ago to really being excited and fulfilled and energized by my days. And I don't have less things. Those of you ladies who know me know that, right? I don't have less things. But the three things that I'm going to teach you are different from what I think most people are doing in their everyday lives. So the three things are, we're really going to define what balance means in your life. And this one is so much more important than you probably think that it is. We're going to talk about giving your yeses and your nos intentionally and taking responsibility for your calendar in a way that promotes more of your true priorities. And I'm going to teach you the specific way that I do that, that does not take very much time, but really is transformational in what your schedule and your priorities look like. So these are simple things, but they tend to go against what our brain wants us to do or tells us to do, right? They are the things that I have done in my own life, still do in my own life today, that have made it nearly unrecognizable, not even maybe as much from the outside, although definitely it does look different from the outside, but so unrecognizable on how I feel in it compared to 10 years ago. So the first thing we're going to talk about is, and I have a couple things for you. If you have a notebook, there may be some things that you want to take notes on. I am a note taker when I do a training. But the first thing we're going to talk about is really what balance is and what it isn't, because this is important for your brain to know, or it's likely going to continue spinning in overwhelm and telling you everything is out of balance. So when I ask women what they want more of, oftentimes one of the most common answers is I want more balance, right? I love the things that I do, or I'm really busy and I want more balance. But when I ask them what balance really would look like, a lot of times we're not really sure. It sounds like I wish I had more time, or I don't want to feel so stressed or overwhelmed. I wish I could feel caught up on things more often than I do. I wish I didn't feel guilty. I wish I had more margin in my life, or that everything ran more smoothly. And so here's where I think that we've been taught something that isn't actually true. And once we grasp this, it is the thing that leads us to more freedom here. So here is what I want to offer you, a new way to look at balance. And I have a whiteboard for you. So balance is actually not a circumstance. And that's sort of what we feel like, right? I'm trying to achieve this thing called balance. It's actually not a circumstance. So it's not this equal scale of amounts of time given to the different things in our life. And when we look at it that way, we set ourselves up for constantly feeling like we're missing the mark everywhere in our life, right? So it is not a circumstance. It is actually a result. Balance is a result that is created by how we think, feel, and operate in the world. It is self-fulfilled and it is self-created. And this is really great news, because that means you have all of the power and all of the control when it comes to feeling balanced and creating a life that is balanced based on your priorities, right? It is internal stability. This is just a different way to look at it. Internal stability, no matter what the changing external circumstances are. How freeing would that be, right? To be able to feel stable and calm internally, regardless of the things that are happening outside of us. So, this is just another way to look at balance, right? So, most of us believe that if things were just more settled down, if life was just more settled down, I will feel balanced. I'm going to move this back out. I've got a couple more for you here in a minute. But here's the thing, and I'm guessing that you guys have all experienced this. Life usually just keeps lifing, right? If we wait for this elusive time in the future when things will just settle down, we're just waiting for something that is never going to happen, because life is going to keep lifing. There's going to be another season, another challenge, another opportunity that maybe you want to pursue, another demand on our time, someone else asking us to do something, be something, right? So I know a lot of you ladies that signed up have a business, and some examples of ways that life is probably going to continue to keep lifing and not actually settle down are: you may be launching something. You may have a launch week. You may have a busy season at work. You may have a kid who's struggling with something. You may have a parent who needs your care. You may have a health challenge yourself, right? When I was going through my breast cancer journey, that created an imbalance in my life that I didn't have a lot of control over. So those are circumstances that are objectively imbalanced, right? These are not things inside of our head. These are actual circumstances that create an imbalance in our life. They're facts. They're not stories that our brain is telling us, which is a whole other thing that we're going to talk about, right? And so when we have one of these things, they require more of us than usual. So here is something that is really important that I want you ladies to take away from today. The goal is not always or not usually to eliminate imbalance in our life or to have the idea that we're shooting for a perfectly balanced life all the time, because that is impossible. We are never going to get that. And if we expect that, then we are like fast tracking ourselves to burnout, right? Because we're going to be constantly living in this state of feeling like we're not achieving something that we should be achieving as wives and moms and working women. So, balance, I mentioned, one of the definitions of balance is internal stability in spite of changing external circumstances. So, that can look like being grounded during uncertainty in your life, trusting yourself through busy seasons, feeling steady when your life doesn't look steady on the outside, or bringing the calm into situations that aren't calm. A phrase that I love is thinking about it as you can walk into an uncertain situation and bring the certain with you. That is a version of balance, right? So we have to kind of normalize the idea that we are going to have imbalance. And I'm going to talk about the good kind and the bad kind and what we can do about it. So this is not bad news. But I think this is a place where a lot of women can get stuck, that we experience a season of imbalance and we immediately think something has gone wrong, right? I'm doing something wrong. Something in my life looks wrong, but imbalance is actually always going to be almost always part of our life. It's part of growth. And if you're here, I know you probably are interested in growth in your life, in your business, right? It's part of being a human. There will always be seasons where one area requires more than another area, and our scales don't necessarily look or feel balanced. So, the distinction between what is an intentional imbalance in our life versus what is an unhealthy imbalance in our life is really important, because not all imbalance is bad, especially when we can recognize that we're choosing it, oftentimes for a season. So, an intentional imbalance could look like growing a business, right? I am in a season of giving more into my business because I'm growing it. Or maybe you're going back to school to get a degree, or you have a loved one who's sick, right? That can create a situation that feels imbalanced in other areas. Maybe feels like, well, I don't have enough to give to my kids, or I don't have enough to give to my business. But it's an intentional imbalance when we're choosing in a season to care for someone else in our family, right? Or working toward a goal that is meaningful to you, or a health challenge that you might be walking through, right? These are seasons that require more energy, more focus, and that's okay. We have to let that be okay. The key question is, am I choosing this, right? Because when we choose an imbalance in our life for a meaningful reason, it feels so different to us, right? When I was walking through my breast cancer journey, that created an imbalance that was intentional. I didn't choose that journey, but it was my circumstance. And so within that journey, I chose to be a little more inward. I chose to be more at home and quiet with my family. I chose to not go full steam ahead in my business at the time, right? So it was an imbalance, but it was an imbalance that I chose in order to be more with my family and to take care of my health. In a way that felt really uncomfortable, because I know, like a lot of you ladies, like I was not used to allowing other people to care for me and love on me, because I was always the one that was raising my hand saying, yes, you need something, I got you, right? And it felt really uncomfortable at first, but it was an intentional imbalance that I was choosing in my life during that time to take care of my health and my family. And then We have unhealthy imbalances. So I know that example, Meg, maybe doesn't sound like a healthy imbalance, right? But the imbalance is because I had a circumstance and I chose what I was going to focus on in my life in a way that tipped the scales more toward family and health and less toward business and work. So, an unhealthy imbalance is where most burnout comes from. And that's what most of us are worried about, right? That's what, if you'll probably hear because you want to stay away from that kind of lifestyle. So, examples of unhealthy imbalance are things like perfectionism. Oh, hi. I mean, a lot of you guys, you're probably like me, you're going to be able to raise your hand to a lot of these, right? People pleasing, lack of boundaries in our life, trying to prove ourselves. This has been a big one for me over the years. It's something that I know about myself now, and I still have to really be intentional that I am doing things from the right place and that I'm not doing things or saying yes to things in order to try to use achievement to prove my success or my worth to people. Constant distractions is another one. Not planning ahead, never resting. So these are all unhealthy examples of imbalances, and these are the things that typically will lead us to burnout. So they are not helping us create something meaningful in our life, and they're draining us. They're leaking our energy all the time. One of the most common things that I hear from moms in my coaching practice is that I'm not spending enough time with my kids, right? I have this imbalance and I'm not giving enough to my family. So, the other thing that I want to talk about today when it comes to these kinds of imbalances in our life is watching really closely for the stories that we tell ourselves. So, the idea as moms that we don't spend enough time with our kids, this is a big one, right? Because we don't want to feel that so many moms are used to the feeling of carrying the mom guilt on our shoulder, trying to work, trying to build something, also trying to be wife and mom and run a household and feel like we're doing it really well, all the things. So this thought that I'm not spending enough time with my kids, I'm not giving enough of the best version of me. Sometimes it could be true, right? And we can all admit that. One of the things that we say in coaching often is we're all good and bad moms. And I think that is so freeing. None of us are bad moms all the time. But probably none of us are the best version of ourselves when we're momming all the time, right? And so if we could just have this, like, you know what, we're all good moms and bad moms. I'm going to be a good mom and a bad mom. That is so freeing because it helps us have more realistic expectations and more grace for ourselves. Because momming is not easy, is it? Little kids, big kids, it does not get easier. Needed that, right? So we're all good moms and bad moms, and we can take the unrealistic expectation of perfect momming all the time, otherwise we're failing, just right off the table. So sometimes maybe it's true that we didn't spend enough time with our kids in a situation, but many times it isn't. It's simply a thought, like a story that our brain has on repeat because we feel guilty that we're working or we feel like we should, right? This is not an objective measure of whether we've spent enough time. This is just our brain constantly telling us the story that we should be doing more. And it can do that in so many areas of our life. This is just one example, right? And because we believe the story, then we feel more guilty and we feel imbalanced, even when the facts don't necessarily support it, right? So I have a coaching client right now who is an entrepreneur, and one of her main things that she wanted to work on in coaching was feeling more balanced, feeling like her business was taking so much of her time and energy, and that she wanted to be able to really be present with her family and give them more. And she reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and said, you know what I just noticed is that that thought came back that I should be doing more with him, that I'm not spending enough time with my kiddo. And she said, and then I realized it wasn't true. She's actually able to step back from the situation and think about, is this really true? And see how it actually wasn't. She's doing a lot of intentional things with him, But if we don't notice, our brain will just keep serving that story up to us on repeat. And then we stay in this perpetual feeling of not enoughness, of guilt, of leaking our energy. And then it affects everything else that we're trying to do, right? Because then we get to work and we are not 100% present there because we feel this guilt that we should be doing something different. So one of the best things that we can do is to drop the feeling, the idea that balance looks like our scales being perfect, right? And instead to focus on what do I want that time to look like, right? Balance doesn't look like an equal amount of time given to all of the things. I mean, if you work and you're watching this, chances are the hours in the day that we give to work are almost always the hours in the more than the hours in the day that we have just spending quality time with family, right? That doesn't mean that we can't have balance in those areas in our life. So the hours don't automatically create quality. That concept right there has been freeing for so many women that I work with. That you don't have to have a set number of time to equal feeling balanced, feeling like you've prioritized your kids or your family or whatever, right? I'm giving the examples of work and family because that's what I see come up most often with my clients, but it can be anything in your life that you feel this tug of war, this like push and pull between, right? So ask yourself, what if I actually did spend plenty of time with them this week? Or what if the problem isn't the amount of time? Because there's no set amount of time that creates the right balance, right? It's our presence with them that creates the quality. So a connected conversation with our kiddo or our partner at dinner can matter more than having a whole afternoon together where we're distracted. And I throw myself in this, right? I had years of being guilty of being home, maybe taking a sick day, being home with a sick kid, and then being on my phone half the time. And so that could have been a big chunk of time, but not really very much quality versus 20 intentional minutes can matter more than 3 distracted hours, right? So when we drop the idea that we have to have a certain amount of time or we're not doing it good enough or we're not doing it right and just focus on how can I be present? What do I want that to look like? So that's what I mentioned at the beginning is really defining what does balance mean to you? Because another thing that I see so often is women saying, I want more balance, but they don't know what it looks like. And if you don't know what it looks like, you're always going to be like elusively chasing what an answer that you don't know. And so you're always going to feel like you're not there, you're not doing enough because you haven't ever stopped to think, what does balance look like for me? So that is the most important step. What does that look like for you? What realistically works in your life? What do you want that to look like? What would it mean to feel like you were balanced? And then really focusing on presence of quality over quantity when it comes to the time we're spending. And this goes for our businesses too, right? So really thinking about, okay, when I am working, I'm going to give myself full permission to work because this is the thing that I'm doing, the thing I'm creating, my gifts that I have, right? So I'm going to give myself permission to be fully present here and to not feel guilty that I'm not having family time right now. And the opposite is true that when I've chosen intentionally that this is going to be my family time, that I decide I had work time. This is not work time. It's okay to set aside the phone, to not be checking the things. I can answer the messages and the emails or check the notifications later because this is the dedicated family time, right? And it sounds so simple, but our lifestyles are so busy and our phones genuinely just make it so easy for us to be connected, especially if you are working at a high level, if you own a business, you're running a business, we feel like I'm the person responsible for that. I have to be available to it, but we have to give ourselves permission to not be available for everything 100% of the time. So the last question is really to ask yourself, what if the problem isn't the amount of time, but it's the story that you're telling yourself about it? And start to notice when your brain is offering you a story that might not actually be true. I mean, these things feel true because we have so many years of believing them, right? But when we can start recognizing it as just a story, then we can change the story that we're telling ourselves. So if you've ever felt burnt out, which I know probably a lot of us have, that is a feeling that often comes from something in our life being imbalanced, right? But here is the thing. Burnout doesn't come from imbalance. It comes from our inability to handle an imbalance, right? So it comes from believing that this shouldn't be happening, or I'm doing something wrong, or everyone else has it figured out, or life should feel balanced all the time. And that is not what real balance is. Real balance is understanding that I'm going to be imbalanced during a lot of times in my life and deciding what am I choosing with intention versus what is unhealthy that I need to stop or correct or let go of. So if you're in a season, or maybe I've talked about some of these things and you can see where you are experiencing an unhealthy imbalance in your life. Some things to think about are what needs to change. Could be your schedule. It could be people around you. It could be things that you've said yes to that don't actually match up with your priorities. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So what needs to change? Second question is what boundaries need to be created to support that? And the third is what needs to be removed? Because we do all have a limited number of hours in the day. And so we can't do everything. We have to be intentional and prioritize what it is that we want to give our precious time and energy to. So those are questions if you have an unhealthy imbalance. If you have an imbalance that is intentional, which might be, my kiddo is getting ready to go off to college. Sarah, I'm sorry to bring it up. I know I did this last year, but this creates an imbalance, right? I am intentionally choosing to do more things with him, to spend more time, to create more experiences. And that creates an imbalance. Maybe I don't have as much time working as I would when I'm not doing this, right? But that's an intentional imbalance that we're choosing. So questions to ask yourself there are, why am I choosing this in this season? This can be easy when we're choosing an imbalance that feels really good or really exciting. It can be harder when it's an imbalance that we are choosing based on a circumstance we don't want, right? Going back to my breast cancer example, you have to ask yourself, why am I choosing this in this season? Because I don't have to. If you're choosing to care for a parent, you don't have to. When we tell ourselves we have to and we don't have a choice, we aren't giving ourselves the true version of the story. We aren't telling ourselves the truth. And then we're not able to get control and create the balance that we need, right? So, why am I choosing this in this season? What is the purpose of it? What can I do to balance the scales? When we know that we have an intentional imbalance in our life, it's so important to think, I know that I'm choosing this. What can I do to balance out the other areas, right? So one of my clients, one of her examples was she knew that she was going through a transition in her brick and mortar business that was going to take time away that isn't part of her normal work. But this transition was happening and she had to be able to give more time. That meant she wouldn't have as much margin, as much downtime with her family as she would like to. And so what she did to try to balance the scales, again, is knowing that this imbalance in her business was a short-term imbalance that she was choosing. She went ahead and scheduled a vacation with her family for the time after that, so that they knew they had that to look forward to. And she knew that she was intentionally choosing something to balance the scales so that she didn't feel that imbalance of, I'm giving too much to work and I'm not giving enough to my family, right? And then another way, and this is actually an example of that, but another question is when this season is over, what will I return to? So reminding ourselves that when I'm choosing something that is imbalanced for a specific period of time, it's so helpful to remind ourselves this is not permanent. This is temporary and I'm choosing it. And when it's over, I will return to giving more time to the other thing over here. So once women understand that balance really is something that they can create, not something that they just magically find or uncover, then the next question becomes, how do we actually create it? How do we create this? And so this is where your yeses and your nos become incredibly important. So as women, especially high achieving, high capacity, do the things women, we have a tendency, don't we, to say yes to too many things, to maybe say yes without thinking, or to say yes when we mean no, even when that feeling. So, one of the things that I work with clients in coaching too, and this is something I have really had to learn myself, is listening to our body, because sometimes our body knows the answer before our brain recognizes it because we're trying to people please or we're trying to come up with logical reasons in our brain, and listening to our body can be so helpful and important. But sometimes we give our yes and our body knows that we meant no, right? Like everything feels tight or our stomach drops or we feel all of a sudden anxious, and our body knew the answer was no, but our mouth said yes. So there are a couple of quotes that I love that really, when I went through an active season of sort of tearing down the yeses that I had given in my life to start over, figure out what I really wanted, and then start building intentional yeses from there. And these are a couple of quotes that I loved during that season. The first one is a Thoreau quote that is, "The price of anything is the amount of life you trade for it." That's so meaningful when we think about it that way, right? But we get in this habit of just coasting through our lives, like, you know, running full speed, just trying to keep up with the next thing and the next thing, that we don't realize that we are trading parts of our life for these things. The price of anything is the amount of life you trade for it. So, we have to be really intentional that we're willing to pay that price, that this is a price that we want to pay with the precious moments of our life that we have. So many women give yeses because we feel like we have to, or someone may be disappointed in us if we don't, or that it will prove that we are successful and capable, or sometimes just because we're in the habit of saying yes to everything without intentionally thinking about what that yes means that we're giving up in our life. So the second quote that I love is, "Whenever you say yes to something, there's less of you for something else. So make sure your yes is worth the less." So, like I said, these really hit home for me during a time in my life when I was overcommitted, and very few of those commitments had been made with true intention. So I realized that I had built this version of success in my life, and I was way over volunteered. And I was on lots of boards, and I was president of the PTA, and I was working and traveling more than full time for work, and, of course, kids and activities and just all the things. And I was saying yes from obligation or because I thought that I should. I didn't want to disappoint someone. And a lot of the charitable boards that I was on was because I thought it would look successful on a resume, right? And here's the thing. Nothing was wrong with any of those opportunities, right? They were all great opportunities, but they weren't actually aligned with how I wanted to spend my life. None of those things really mattered to me. I was on a hospital board for something I didn't even really care about, but it was just one of those boards that looks good when you say you're on it, right? As well as on several other things. And so it wasn't fast, it wasn't overnight. I had made commitments to a lot of things in my life. But as I started to ask myself, what do I really want? What is really important to me? What do I want to have my time set aside for? I started unwinding those commitments to get myself to a point where I could actually say, what do I want to give my time for? And once you have that filter of what are the things that are most important to me, if I am building my own business, I want to do things that move that business forward. Or I want to make sure that my life feels like there's margin for fun and family, or whatever it means to you. And then I started giving my yeses with intention. And so a lot of you ladies know that I'm very involved with Halo Foundation. I wasn't before. I was involved with three or four other organizations that weren't on my heart, that somebody at some point had asked me to be on. And when I unwound those, I was able to figure out, what do I want to give my yes to? And I've been able to serve Halo in so many different ways, in a way that just fills my own heart and my own cup. And I absolutely love it. And it's so life-giving to me instead of energy draining. So I'm still giving my time and my treasure and volunteering, but it's something that feels so good and balanced and fills me up instead of feeling like it's sucking my energy, energy that I didn't feel like I had to spare, right? So being okay with the fact that they may be great yeses, but that doesn't make them your right yeses. I had something come up. I'll tell a quick story. I had something come up after I did this. I tore all the stuff down in my life that didn't make sense, that was draining my energy. I took some time as a breather to not give yeses until I felt recovered from being burnt out. And I really was clear on what I wanted to give yeses for. And as I was coming out of that and starting to really give yeses with intention and being okay giving nos in order to preserve my time for the yeses I wanted to give, I had an opportunity come up that might have been the one thing that could have derailed what I was trying to build. I had so some of you guys will know, my dad years ago was on the public school board in our town, and I've always been passionate about the public schools. My kids both go to the public schools or went to, and a group of older men in town that were really active in the schools approached me and said, we really would love to have a strong woman, female candidate on the school board. Would you consider running? And it was one of those things that was like, I had always kind of wondered if maybe I would. And I knew that that was such a great organization. I knew it was a great opportunity for a lot of different reasons. And I was so tempted to say yes. But because of this work that I had been doing, I was able to step back and really be honest with myself and ask myself if this moved me in the directions of the things that I had said were my priorities. And the answer was no. And that doesn't mean that it wasn't a wonderful opportunity or something that, yes, deserved someone who was willing to do a really great job at that and fight for the kids and fight for the teachers, and the district and the public schools has such a massive impact on communities in general, right? But it wasn't the right yes for me. And because I said no, I ended up having a friend that ran, and she served 2 terms and she was phenomenal. So I didn't have to give my yes in order for that to be a great opportunity. And because I didn't say yes, someone else filled that opportunity that was meant for it. So being really clear on your yeses, your nos, and being okay giving nos if you know that they don't align with where you want to go and what you want to create. Because every yes we give creates a no, right? If I had said yes to that, that would have been a massive time commitment and it would have forced no's to a lot of other things in my life. And I might not be sitting here today with my life looking the way that it does, having built the businesses that I have and created the life that I have, if I had had to say no to a lot of things at that point, right? So saying yes to being on another committee, it might be saying no to margin in your life, or saying yes to endless scrolling at night. Might be saying no to your goals. So it's not that that's bad. It's just that, are you doing it with intention, or is it something that's sucking away your energy and keeping you from saying yes to something that you really want? Saying yes to people pleasing can be saying no to your own priorities. So, some reflection questions on this is, how did this get on my plate? How did it get here? Did I pick this with intention? Second is, would I choose this again today? If this was brand new and someone was saying, hey, would you do this? Would you choose it today? And then really thinking about, what am I doing this from? Am I doing this from desire? Am I doing this from obligation, from guilt, maybe from fear? Am I doing it just because I've always done it and I haven't even really thought about it in a while? So when something comes up, it's so helpful to ask yourself if it moves you toward or away from what your priorities are. And then you have that you can use as a filter to help guide your decisions going forward. Okay. The last thing that I want to cover today is using your calendar on purpose. And I'm going to teach you a specific way that I do this that is transformational. It's not time consuming at all. And it is transformational in building days and weeks and months that reflect the life that you want, that reflect the priorities that you have. And this is an important way that we create balance, right? It's not just created in our mind, but it is created in our decisions. And our calendars tell the truth, don't they? We can say what we want, but our calendar will tell the truth about whether or not we are making the decisions that are in line with the balance we want and the priorities that we say that we have, right? It should serve the life that you're creating instead of feeling like you are a slave to your calendar. So, a lot of women tell me, and I heard this for years when I was building a network marketing business and working full time and had little kids. A lot of women would say, I would love to do that, but I just don't have time. But the truth is, we all have the same number of hours in the day. So when we have to look at the calendar and discover how we're actually spending that time, because we are spending time, oftentimes when we feel like we just don't have time, if we feel like we just don't have time for something that truly is important to us, it's because we're not using the rest of our time somewhere with intention. So one of the most important things that we can do, and this can sometimes be a little affronting to people, feel maybe a little offensive, is the idea of taking radical ownership of your schedule and your calendar. That if it's on your calendar, you agreed to it at some point. And I have had a lot of people that want to be like, oh, no, no, this is just my kids' softball schedule is crazy. And we have to be here and here and here, and I don't have time. Okay, but you didn't have to sign the kid up for softball, right? You made that decision because that was an opportunity for whatever reason that you had a reason, right? That you wanted to do that for your kid or your kid to have that opportunity. So when you look at your calendar and feel overwhelmed by all of the softball things, that doesn't serve you. What serves you is remembering, I chose this with intention and this was the reason, right? So this is not to blame ourselves for creating our calendar problems, but to take ownership of it. When I looked at my calendar, so again, going back to the example of breast cancer, there was a time when I had to go to radiation every workday, every weekday for a month. And that takes a lot of time that is not normally in my schedule, right? So we talked about this imbalance that it creates. And I don't want that on my calendar. But the reality is, I chose that with intention. right? I also got, I still do get, but not to the same extent, high dose vitamin C IVs. At the time when I first got my diagnosis, I was doing 2 a week at a very high dose. So it was 3.5 hours twice a week, sitting in the doctor's office, getting an IV. I didn't want to spend my time that way. But it was an intentional choice that I was making. And when I own that choice and I know why I'm making it, I feel totally different about it than looking at my calendar and being like, you know what, radiation sucks. I don't have time for this. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to live a life. I want to be spending time with my kids. Right? That doesn't serve me at all. That creates this feeling of imbalance, like I'm not being enough somewhere else. So, radical ownership. But if it's on your calendar, you chose it in some way. And then this helps you start to see, did I really mean to choose that? Do I want to keep choosing that or not? If the answer is yes, then stop blaming yourself or heaping on this is just sucking my time, right? We have to remember I chose that and there was a reason that I chose it. If not, then you can either take it off or say no the next time that thing comes up, right? So I'm going to teach you a framework of how I do this with intention in my calendar every week because our days matter. Our weeks matter. They string together and make an entire month. How many of you, like me, look back at the end of the month and you're like, where did that month go? So if we're not planning it with intention, they are slipping by. And before we know it, the months have made up our years, and our years are the life. It's our life is not someday in the future. It is right now, the days, the weeks, the months that are passing, right? So I use a framework. I call it Sunday planning. It's just a short framework of how I design my week with intention and then look at every day with intention. So after you're clear on your priorities, what you're giving your yeses and nos to, the balance that you're creating, you sort of have that as a filter to plan your schedule in a way that works for you instead of against you. So I'm going to show you this. Okay, there's two parts to how I plan my week with intention. The first one is what I call the Sunday planning. So this is kind of step one for creating your week with intention, which is huge for the opportunity to feel balanced in your life for this upcoming week, right? So I take not a lot of time. It might take you more time while you're getting used to it. It probably takes me 5 minutes. I say take 5 to 10 minutes on a Sunday. This is your intentional Sunday planning time. And you're really just going to be thinking through like what matters the most to you this week, making sure that those things go on your calendar first. Most people do the opposite, right? We let our week fill up with everybody else's priorities. What are the appointments? What are the things? That all fills in our calendar. And then we're like, well, if there's time left, maybe I'll go to the gym. Or if there's time left, maybe I'll work on my business. Or, right? And then we end up with a schedule that reflects all of these other priorities that aren't actually ours and doesn't actually feel balanced or look like the life that we're trying to create, right? So it's starting with our priorities first. So here's what I do on a Sunday. 5 to 10 minutes, I sit down, intentional time, and I look at my calendar for the week. What appointments do I have coming up, right? Just this one step so helpful because starting Monday, looking at my week, I found feels overwhelming, chaotic. Maybe I feel unprepared. Doing this on Sunday, I head into the week feeling calm and prepared, and I've already built in my stuff, right? So I look at my calendar for the upcoming week, and then I schedule in my priorities. Okay, do I want to go to the gym? When am I working on? So, for example, teaching this webinar, right? I have had some extra things that I've been doing. I had to make sure that I wrote the content for it, I scheduled the emails to go out, scheduled some social media posts, right? So those are things that on Sunday I look at, okay, what do I have coming up? Okay, well, I need to write this email. I need to write this social media post. I need to finish the content. I need to get the little flip charts done, right? Whatever it is. So I look at what do I what do I want? Okay, well, maybe I want to have time for me for this week, or I want to set aside some special time with a kiddo, whatever my things are. So I'm going to look at my appointments. These are the things that are already on there. Maybe I have some work meetings. Maybe I have an appointment with Sarah to fix my hair up. Whatever is already on my calendar. And then I'm going to say, what are the things that are my priorities this week? And I'm not just going to say them. I am going to schedule them into my priorities. If they don't get scheduled on the calendar, they really don't count, right? And this is where so many of us set ourselves up for failure, is not actually deciding a time when we're going to do the things that we have said are important to us. So when you look at your week, you're going to also decide, what are the things that I want to make sure become priorities this week, and you are going to schedule them in. It doesn't mean you can't move things around, because so often our days don't go the way we think they're going to go, right? But you're going to schedule them in, and then if you have to move it, you find another place to move it. This is keeping your promises to yourself. This is the way that we create a life that we love, that is designed by us, right? Rather than just being at the whim of everyone else's priorities. Then, is there anything that you can remove or delegate? Do you have things that you do just out of habit that someone else can do? Maybe it's someone else in your household. Maybe your kids don't do their own laundry, but they could start doing their laundry so that you can have some extra time back somewhere. Maybe you don't pay someone to clean your house, but you could have more impact in your business if you were outsourcing that, right? So just looking at your calendar and your schedule objectively, what's on there? What are you scheduling in? Is there anything that you can take off or delegate? Just right off the top. And then people sometimes have a lot of feelings about this one, but meal plan. Now, this is not something that needs to be complicated, but I do find that it makes the week so much smoother. So when I say meal plan, I don't mean like complicated, you need to have a bunch of new recipes, you need to be cooking from scratch every day. That is not what this means. It means looking at your calendar objectively and deciding ahead of time what are we eating, because that's what we know as women. The people got to eat dinner every day, whether we like it or not. And oftentimes that falls to us to be the ultimate decision maker. So when I do this, I look out at the schedule. Okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, what do we have? And it does not look like me making meals. Sometimes, maybe twice a week, I'm making a meal. The rest of the time, it might be like, okay, we've got stuff going on. We're grabbing subs that week, or I have something in the freezer we're going to eat that week, or we're going to go out to dinner Friday night. Tonight, we're going out to dinner. Y'all, I celebrated last Sunday 5 years cancer free. So we are taking my parents and we're going to CC City Broiler in Columbia tonight to celebrate. So that was on my calendar. But then you already know ahead of time, this is what we're doing for dinners. You don't have to leak your energy throughout the week, or you and your husband back and forth. I don't know. What do we want to do? What do we feel like? What do we have? No, again, you can change it. But it sends you into the week already having a plan. So you're going to build in what matters, and you're going to say no to what doesn't. So this is the piece that is Sunday planning, right? And just some other examples of things that you might want to schedule in your workouts. If you want to go for a walk every day, if you want to have time to set aside for read. I love reading. And I used to not give myself downtime, and I rarely would set aside time for reading. And something I started doing at the beginning of this process is I would cut myself off on a Saturday or a Sunday at 3 o'clock. Okay, whatever has gotten done that needed to be done is done. I'm not going to keep working myself in every spare minute or second, and then I don't have rest. By 3 o'clock, I'm done with the do. I'm done with the to-do list. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read. And now I just do it. But it was something I scheduled at the beginning. Okay, I want to make sure we get this done in an hour, so I'm going to move on. Okay, the next piece of this is the daily planning. So that's Sunday planning. You head into Monday with a plan, feeling calm, feeling ready, instead of feeling chaotic and overwhelmed on a Monday. The next piece of this is the daily planning. This is how you set up every single day for success with your own priorities. So this is something that I do. It just takes 5 minutes, maybe less. the night before. I do it as I'm wrapping up my work day. So when I'm finishing work, closing my computer down, I do this. I grab out my planner, I flip to the next day. You're going to look at your calendar for tomorrow. What are the appointments that you already had on your calendar? What are the things you scheduled in, right? You're going to choose your top three things that you want to make sure are a priority for you, not 27 things. This was another thing that really helped and impacted the balance that I felt in my life was instead of having the perpetual to-do list, I switched to, of course, I have a list. These are the things I planned on Sunday. These are the things, we'll use business as an example. These are the things that I want to do for my coaching business this week. And then when I'm looking at tomorrow, I'm going to add the top three things in there. I need to write a social media post. I need to write a Tuesday email, and I need to get back to a client on a resource that I promised her, right? Whatever it is, the top three things. As when those things get done, then I get to decide, am I done for the day? Do I get to rest? Do I have a reward and I'm going to read? Or if I still am feeling the energy, they didn't take as long as I thought, then maybe I do add something else, right? But you're gonna add your top three things. Dinner, you already have it planned. Yay, you. Any to-dos. So if I have a phone call I need to make a doctor's appointment, I need to call the CPA about something, right? Whatever it is, I'm going to make my to-dos. So I already know going into the next day, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to accomplish? And I'm so much more focused. And that day is now designed around the kind of day that I want to have. It doesn't mean I don't still have appointments or priorities that may have to do with somebody else's something, but it means that I've looked at that day with intention and I'm building it around the things that are important to me. And then I love to have write down my goal, or if it's a thought or a new belief that you are working on cultivating, or a piece of scripture that you love, or a note of gratitude, something like that. So everything is not actually a priority. We tend to run through our lives feeling like that, right? As high capacity women, that everything must be a priority. It is not. So I'm here to give you permission today that everything is not a priority and you do not have to treat it all as such. And this is what gives you a tool for designing your days rather than just defaulting through them without any thought or intention. So, simple framework, right? You're going to do Sunday plan, you're going to do your daily plan. But this is such an easy tool for actually creating days and weeks that you love by your design, building in margin if you want it, building in the things that are important to you. Everything else fills in after, right? You are prioritizing first. So, those are the three basic parts of balance. So, for the women that I work with, having more knowledge, knowing more things is not usually the problem, right? Um, we don't need more information. You probably already know you need more boundaries in your life. You probably already know you need to stop saying yes to everything, right? You probably already know that you need to prioritize yourself more often. The challenge is not for us knowing what to do. It's actually implementing it consistently when real life is also happening, which, spoiler alert, is 100% of the time, pretty much. Life is always going to life. Kids are still going to need things. Work is still going to be demanding. Your business is still going to have things that don't go according to plan and require courage that you wish you didn't have to muster. Your brain is still going to offer you doubt and guilt and overwhelm and fear. And that is where having a coach comes in. So most of my clients are women who are capable and responsible and carrying a lot. They are often entrepreneurs, creators, business owners, women in professional demanding careers, women going through transition seasons in life, maybe transitioning out of a career into something else, or going from having a full home to an empty nest, or women building something meaningful and also really wanting to be present with the people that they love. And these women from the outside often look like they have it all together. Hi, that was me. But internally, They are dealing with overwhelm or decision fatigue or feeling constant pressure, guilt, not feeling clear about what their next steps are, or feeling like they're pulled in just too many directions. And they will tell me things like, I know I am capable of more, but I don't know how to get there. I just feel so stuck and so bogged down in everything. Or I feel like I'm working so hard, but I want to enjoy my life more while I'm building this business. Like, what am I building it for? Or I want to grow my business, but I'm afraid of losing myself in the process. I don't trust myself to not go into burnout. So, this is where having a coach is so impactful. Coaching is not about me giving you a to-do list. It's about helping you think differently and lead yourself differently and create results in your life and your business differently to help you really be able to see where you have old stories or belief patterns and reframe them to something that moves you in the direction you want to go. So, oftentimes, it looks like working on creating a life or a business by design instead of living on autopilot, getting really clear on what you actually want your life to look and feel like. Also, creating balance without burnout, which we talked about today, right? Learning how to manage your time and your energy and your priorities and your expectations, and creating a version of success that feels sustainable for you. Also, we work on confidence and decision making, which is really trusting yourself, making decisions faster, spending less time second guessing yourself. If you have a business, that's a priority for a lot of the women I work with, which is not strategy, but mindset is required for growth because every new level of your business requires a new way of thinking. And then just managing our minds in general, like learning how to handle self doubt and fear and overwhelm and comparison and people pleasing and perfectionism instead of letting those things drive your decisions and the way that you show up to your life and the people around you. So, becoming the woman that your next level, whatever that looks like for you, requires. This is where so much of the transformation happens because your next level is not actually required by, it's not created by doing more things. Like, phew, right? It's actually created by being more intentional, the things that we talked about today, being more confident, more courageous, and more aligned with who you are meant to be. So if today's workshop resonated with you, if you found yourself thinking, oh my gosh, this is me, these are the things that I've been struggling with, I would love to have a conversation about how I can help. My one-on-one coaching program is 90 days where we work together weekly to help you create more clarity, confidence, balance, and momentum in your life and your business. So I am booking clients for August now. I have a couple of spots open. I do keep a relatively small practice intentionally, but I know I'm going to have a couple of spots open in August. So if you'd like to learn more or schedule a time when we just hop on Zoom together, we chat about what your goals are, your questions, what coaching with me looks like, you can go to thebloomingcarrot.com/coaching and pick a time that works for you there. I would love to walk with you on your journey and help you with these things and really help you create a life and a business that you love waking up to, that give you energy instead of draining your energy every day. The great news is you don't actually need a completely different life to do that. Yay, right? You don't need to finally get caught up. How many of us I would just feel better if I was finally caught up? Because spoiler alert, probably not ever going to be. You don't need to earn the right to feel balanced in your life. You just need the tools to lead yourself through the life that you're already living. And that is a skill that will serve you in your business, in your relationship, in every season that you have ahead of you. So, that is what I have for you today. If you are interested in learning more about one-on-one coaching, I would love to have a quick chat with you. But that's what I have. I hope this is helpful. Thank you again so much for spending your precious time here with me. Now go create a weekend that feels balanced and moves you toward more things that you want and less things that you don't want. So that's it. Love you guys. Have a great weekend.